am Marwan Cameron, and this is The Conduit. Happy Monday, everyone. Oh, you know I love my Mondays. It is August 16, 2021, 72 degrees in beautiful Kitsap County. We definitely needed a reprieve from this heat, so I am not unhappy about that, especially since my air conditioner broke yesterday. Actually, the duct on the back out of the window broke into pieces. So I haven't ducted it back together yet. So I'm thankful for 72 degrees. I ended up spending pretty much the whole weekend at G2 because they've got super air conditioning there. So I think I left around midnight on Saturday and about 11 p.m. last night. So I had to do what I had to do to stay cool. And, that's what I did. But I'm always working 7 days a week, very rarely take a break. But, I'm doing what I love. So it's all good. As you know, we've got a special guest today, one that you have seen before, Matt Garrett from Kitsap Community Resources. He's going to come on and give us some updates on KEPA, which is the Kitsap Eviction Protection Program, and maybe some other good nuggets of information. So we do appreciate his willingness to come on and share that really important information with all of you. And I think a lot of times it's we have these partnerships in the community, and it's great because we can get out and talk with folks that may be a little bit more difficult for a bigger organization to reach. But it's good to hear it from the source, right? So sometimes when you hear things second, third, fourth hand, sometimes it gets lost in translation. And at the same time, right, programs change, right? Situations change. And so if we can bring you the most relevant, up-to-date information all the time, then it just keeps everyone informed, and it reduces that lag time, right? So you may have got information 2 weeks ago and it's changed, and somehow you just missed it, you didn't get the information, and then you're operating based on that. And some of that is just a miscommunication, right? So then we could be thinking something bad is happening, or organizations are out to get us, and this, that, and the other, and that's not the case at all, right? So transparency, communication, partnership, and relationship, as Christina Rourke likes to say. It's so interesting when she says it because she doesn't put an S on the back of it. So I've always grown up with relationships. So she says relationship. So it's a new thing for me. It's like fish and fishies, right? What's the plural of that? Anyhow, let me go ahead and bring Matt on to front stage here. Matt, how you doing today?
Hey Marwan, good to have you. Such good vibes being on the show. I love your intro every time.
I appreciate it. You can't really use copyright music, so kind of finding that intro. I like jazz, and it's just kind of calming, and so it works out pretty good. When I used to teach at the college, I was an academic advisor for professional technical programs, and my office would be right in the front of the advising center. And so it got to a point where I'd have a Keurig in there, and music playing, and folks could come in. This is high stress, right? What do I do? I got to take all these classes. I need to make money, take care of myself and my family. And it's just really stressful, or I failed a class, or, just all these things. So it's like, come on in, sit down, relax, breathe. All right, what's going on? And so, it just helps. You know what I mean? It just helps. Attitude can make, bad situations a little bit more palpable to digest. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the oh man, yeah. Especially right now, given how challenging things are. I actually really been looking forward to coming on the conduit. So, really excited, and know that mood. It means a lot to people, right? Because you're coming in, especially. I mean, especially the folks that we're working with, right? Behind on rent, worried about putting food on the table, employment issues, and having a little positivity goes a really long way. So a lot of respect.
All right, absolutely. Well, I appreciate your willingness to come on, and it's good because the more that we interact, the more we get to know each other, and I think that's really powerful thing to do. One of the things that I say on my podcast is that you need to expand your circle of influence and your circle of support, and I challenge folks to try to meet 5 new people every month, right? So I think that's really important, and folks that are in our positions, like for myself, I grew up low income, grew up in the foster care system, was adopted, went back into the foster care system, have, experienced homelessness and a lot of different other things. Having a good social network and support of folks that you can trust that aren't, kind of out for their own, or they want you to fare with their friends, right? It's good when everything is going well, but when it's not, you can't find them anymore. So that's really, really important. Oh wow, we got Janie Banani, and she's in Gold Coast, Australia. So hey, how you doing there? Glad you can join us. And Sabrina's on, cool studio vibe. So we are international already. So that's pretty awesome. I love it. So how's your Monday going? I want to ask you how you doing. How you feeling?
Oh gosh, yeah. You have to apologize. I'm actually at home right now. I've been sick all weekend, so I'm trying to power through. We got a lot going on, as you know. So, but working from home, make sure get that negative COVID test before I go back into work. So that's what's happening right now. So I apologize if I'm a little nasally or a little don't sound normal. It's because I got got some stuff going on.
Well, no worries. Well, as we are, this is a live environment. One of my drivers just walked in. Come on, Tony. Come on, get on camera and say hi. So he walked up. The door was open. So this is Tony Wallace. This is one of our drivers.
Hey, how's it going, Tony? Pleasure to see you.
Famous. Where am I at? Right there?
Yeah, you're famous.
Hi,
That's
Marwan.
it.
How are you? Hi, you guys. Hi out there.
So if you call G2 for transportation, you might get this gentleman. Very calm.
Yeah.
Has really good
You
advice.
don't see me. Y'all masked up.
Yes, he definitely will be masked up.
Yeah.
We're in that space now where we have to be careful.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, can we talk about that first, and then we'll just kind of work
Sure.
backwards about what's going on with KCR in regards to COVID, so people can have an understanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
You asking me?
No. Well, I'm talking to.
Thank you.
Good to see you, sir. Did you need something?
I have a question. You're on the
Yeah,
air. I don't wanna
we are
get-
live on YouTube and Facebook and Twitch. So how about we do this another
Love you
time?
guys. Talk to you guys later. Peace. I'll call you, sir.
All right, you got it.
Sorry about that.
No worries. You good.
Okay.
All right. Sorry about that, everyone. All right, go ahead there, Matt.
Yeah, so we got a number of people that are out. We got a good chunk of folks that are vaccinated. So we hope we'll come through this, unscathed. But right now we're having to scale back a little bit because we got a lot of people that are out. So we're just doing our due diligence. Make sure people get tested, right? Always encouraging people to get the vaccine, so this is the standard operation. But I think for the next few days, we might be a little limited in some of the services that we provide to the community, especially out of the 1201 office.
Gotcha. And so what departments are affected by that?
Mainly Housing Solutions Center and housing right now.
Okay. And so there might just be a delay in, responses either by phone or email or paperwork being processed. So please be patient. Do know that they're not ignoring you. They're already pretty overwhelmed. I know I was having a conversation with who processes the programming for shelters. Which department is that?
Housing Solutions Center. So Jasmine or Kathleen.
Right. Yeah, I know they were talking about hiring some new people. So, being short staffed already and then having some sickness, so there's going to be some delay there. So a little grace will be needed in that regard. But it's good to know that, right? If you don't know that on your side and you're waiting to receive service or paperwork or a phone call or an email response, you're like, how come they're not getting back to me? And I'm not saying that it doesn't mean that something else could be going on where there's an issue, but this is what's happening. So that's part of it. And so when you don't know that, waiting on the other side, it's very frustrating. So, and again, we know this because of relationship. True story.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I do think we want to be as transparent as possible. I loved your intro talking about that, of building that trust and transparency, especially with organizations like yours that are really working with the people and have those on the ground relationships that we don't have. So yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, and as you know, we are one of the buy-in forums that partners with KCR and the county to work on the Kitsap Eviction Protection Program, which is KEPA, if you've heard that, and the ERAP or the TRAP, which you might have heard any of these acronyms, is all around eviction protection. So whatever you think it is, just know it's all under KEPA, and that's it. But we had a meeting on Friday, and I was in a dental chair, so I didn't get to hear everything. And I was just hoping that you would kind of talk about just kind of that little first page of kind of the common problems and solutions, the landlord agreement issues, vacating clients, subleasing, friends, families, letters of attestation. Did I say that right? And pledge, and then income documentation. Because I think there's, like you said, there's a lot of miscommunication and there's changes. So hearing that, again, from the source, I think is really important. So if you don't mind, if there's one that you can't talk about, just let me know. But let's just start with the landlord agreement issues. Like what are some kind of concerns or some things that need to clarify there?
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing this up, Marwan. And if I'm droning on too long, or you, please feel free to keep me on the flow. I tend to sometimes go too far in the details. So
I
please feel
love
free to help me
loquacious.
along. So for some of the landlord's agreements. So one thing, that and again, the problems. Yeah, I guess I'll caveat with this, right? It's easy to look at the problems and think that's what's happening with the whole program, and that's not the case, right? The problems are the vast minority of cases. Far and beyond most of the assistance that we've given has been fine, no problems. We've been able to help clients; they've qualified. We've been helping landlords. So definitely don't want to give the impression that these are widespread, but of the problems, right, there's been a few themes. And so that's some of the stuff we're dealing with. So yeah, no, thanks for giving me a chance to talk about that with folks. So the first is that with some of the landlord's agreements, and again, we suspect most of these problems are from miscommunication, just like you said, right? People not understanding the program. And that's very reasonable. These forms are complicated. These programs are complicated. We're constantly asking questions, right, of Commerce, and Commerce is asking questions of the federal government. So sometimes this can be confusing, right? We've got a lot of people working, which is great, but also, right, the more folks you have, the more of a chance for miscommunication from us to KEPA outreach organizations to clients, and then vice versa. So we always try to assume positive intent. We have a problem solver mode, right? Is we're not just jumping to disqualify people, we want to qualify folks. That's why I always tell my staff is we're not here to disqualify. We're here to do everything we can to qualify them for the program. But at the end of the day, there's still some guide rails and guidelines that we have to follow, right? That we can't break. So we're always trying to get people on the program. So that's kind of our mindset as we're looking at some of this. But so the first issue is that clients not present for the months that we've paid, right? And it might seem fairly obvious, but in some cases, this can be confusing, right? Especially with motels where people kind of check in and out, or if people don't have long-term stay agreements or are staying at places month to month. There's various reasons why this might not be clear. But essentially, yeah, we can't, if the client is not there, we can't pay the landlord or the motel. And we also can't, so like if the client was at the place 1 month and then not there, but then comes back or whatever it is, then those months that we've paid can't just be banked forward, right? We can only pay 2 months forward. We can't pay more than that, right? One, out of fairness, right? That's what, we've done that for everyone else. So we can't, in some cases say, all right, well, you weren't there, so now you get 3 months forward, right? So they can't bank credit. So that's kind of the first one. And again, we think that's just communication, and you all, the outreach partners, have been phenomenal, and we'll continue to try to talk with landlords and tenants and try to educate them going forward. Yeah. Do you want me to say any more on that piece?
Sure. I mean, like, again, you can go on. I love loquacious folks, so you could be talkative. The more information, the better. So
sounds good.
I'll be here all day.
Awesome. So again, with the landlord agreements and the hotels, there's been a lot of confusion, like when can a hotel get paid for and when it can't. And right now we can't move people into hotels. And I know we are helping people with hotels, and that's very frustrating, right? Especially if you're homeless. But this grant is specifically for eviction prevention. So it's people that are housed to prevent them from getting evicted. So when we can when we can help as a hotel is when a client is using that as a long-term stay, meaning they have either a lease with that hotel, they have a long-term stay agreement, and that they've been there for longer than 14 days, meaning they've paid, or someone else has paid on their behalf to stay there longer than 14 days. And right, that they can show that they're a long-term resident, right? They're not just a temporary person. So that's the confusion too. So I wanted to follow that up. The next one is vacating clients. And Marwan, please feel free to jump in with questions too, if you have any or want me to explore any other. But I think you talked about vacating clients, right? That was the next one.
Sure. And folks listening in, if you do have questions for Matt, just type them in the chat.
Yeah.
And if he can't answer them, he'll answer them online. If it's more personal, then we'll make sure that you get in contact so that he can work with you one-on-one.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. General questions, I have no problem answering in formats like this or in public, but I really definitely prefer, for privacy reasons, but also if there's specific stuff, to come into KCR, get it with a navigator or myself, and we can kind of go through your case. But vacating clients, yeah, if a client leaves the unit before our assistance is ended, that does need to be returned back to KCR, right? One, so that we can use it for someone else, but two, right, the landlord shouldn't be collecting money for a tenant that's not there. Right, the tenant has already gone. They can't use that for another client, right? Because that client might not be qualified for the program, and so the landlord does need to give those funds back, or they can't be saved, like in a hotel situation. If that client leaves and then comes back, it can't be saved unless the client maintains that as their residence, right? If the client is gone, just like an apartment, if you leave for a week and then come back, that's fine, right? Because they're still a resident there. But if the motel is renting it out during that week, well, they're no longer a resident, right? If the motel is using that for other, then they don't have a place reserved. So that's where some of the confusion comes from. But and again, back to
so let me jump in there on that. So and this seems kind of weird, but what if that person thinks they have an agreement with the hotel, they leave for the week and come back, and the hotel did rent the space out because they're like, hey, well, they're not here, we can make money off it. And they come back and they're like, well, I'm kind of stuck. What then?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Marwan. And that's why I love questions, because you help us think about stuff that we don't think about. So I would say to that one, the first is talking with the motel and say, hey, we had this, like, show them, because typically we ask for some type of documentation from the tenants that they're in a long-term stay, whether that's a letter or a contract from the motel or hotel, or it's a simple lease agreement, right? So the first is take that documentation and say, hey, I've got, like, why did you rent my room out, right? Like, because I have this documentation, KCR paid up through this time, and hopefully the hotel, sorry, is a mistake, and then you'll have the room because it was paid for. We can definitely get involved at that point too, is if the hotel's not, like, looping us in and say, hey, this is what's happening. And a lot of problems can be resolved by looping getting your outreach organization, getting us involved so that we can try to be helpful. And then I think the worst case scenario, if they did violate a long-term stay or a lease, then we could potentially refer to legal services if there was a violation of the landlord-tenant law, if they actually didn't fulfill their end of the bargain as a landlord, and they're not willing to cooperate, or we can't figure out a solution. Then I think then legal services would be an appropriate referral.
So it sounds like if there's kind of anything, that conflict that comes up, or there's any questions, just ask, reach out. Don't make assumptions, but reach out as soon as possible. There's no such thing as a bad question. And you will always be your own best advocate. So please do ask, and try to stay calm, because I know that there's, some folks that I work with, and even I can do this sometimes, is get kind of stressed out because I've got all these things spinning in my mind. Well, it could be this, or it could be that, or it's this and it's that, or it could be, and you just come up with all these different scenarios. And then when you find out what it is, it's like it was none of the above, and it was something that had nothing to do with trying to harm you or anything else. And it's like, oh, well, actually my child was in the emergency room and was airlifted to such and such. And that was the scenario. It's like, oh, wow. Well, man. And so you just put yourself through all of this for no reason. Not to say that it could be that reason, but a lot of times, like, it that energy doesn't serve you, So reach out, just wait and get your answer. Work on some other things. It's the Serenity Prayer. God grant me the serenity to work on the things that I can, let go of the things that I can't. And
Mm-hmm.
when it comes around, then you process and you work with it. Go ahead, man. I'm sorry. I just think about those things when I we talk through scenarios.
Please don't apologize. I love the back and forth energy, and I agree with everything you just said. And I think that's often where clients find themselves. And I think and from some of the feedback we've gotten in the past, is some clients don't feel comfortable or feel intimidated talking with us, and that's why we're working with you all, right, to try to make us more accessible. And I think that's really what we're doing here, right, is to try to make us more accessible. And that's this attitude is like, we're not against you, right? We're trying to qualify you. We're trying to help, right? That's our whole goal. And so, yeah, some of the problems we've had are largely, again, miscommunication between the client, right, and not understanding the assistance that they have, right? But if you came right away, we could either, right, have the motel refund that, right, or we could work with the motel, because then if the client just leaves, that could be problems elsewhere, right? Because now the hotel is taking money for clients that just left, right? Because they think I'm out of luck, and it's like, well, you're not out of luck if you would have communicated right away, right? And I think having that and being your own advocate is tremendously helpful, because a lot of times we don't know, right? We're moving so fast at processing new people with this program, right? We pay and the money's out there, and we expect the landlord, to uphold their end of the bargain. But if they're not, the only way we're going to know is if the tenant lets us know, or if you all let us know, right?
Well, and let me state, I think for the ERAP, at the end of last year, it was like 3 million was given out in just a few months.
Oh yeah.
And how many different people and families was that? So,
Yeah.
From your own myopic viewpoint, as you go in to get services, it's like, well, I gave you my paperwork. You should know who I am.
Yeah.
It's like, I would love to know who you are, but there's 1,000 of you.
Yeah.
I might have talked to you yesterday, but
Yeah.
I've looked at 50 different names and 50 different scenarios since that point in time, and I honestly don't remember. So I'd have to, catch myself up and refresh on what your situation is. So,
Yeah.
social services, social work is underpaid and overworked, by by exponential.
Yeah.
So, it that is what it is. And so, one thing that I think is important too is anytime that you can email information or scan it in, that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Make a copy of your own documentation so you have it, right? So one of the and this isn't just with KCR, this is just with anything, right? We fill out this paperwork, this application that is so important to us,
Mm-hmm.
and then we hand over that only copy, and then it's
Yeah.
gone. And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and if they lose it, this is a huge organization, and
Yeah.
it's been misplaced or it's gone somewhere. And it's like, what do you mean? Where's my paperwork?
Yeah.
Well, if you had a
Yeah.
copy, it's like, oh, you lost my paperwork. That's
Yeah.
disappointing, but here you go.
Yeah.
I got a copy of it right here. And again,
Yeah.
and whenever you can scan it, then you've got that email, right? And if it gets buried, it's like, up, resend. There you go. And it was date and time stamp. So it's like, yes, I got it in on the deadline. I say that because that's important when we're applying for grants, right?
Yep. Yep.
So there was one that we got in. There was something wrong with the submission electronical piece of it. And I sent an email, and the deadline was like, most grants are due by close of business, right?
Mm-hmm.
This one was due at midnight, and I was getting it in at like 11:50, and I couldn't
Yeah.
submit it. Like, oh my God, it just cost us this, the opportunity
Yep.
for this money.
Yep.
Okay, guys, this isn't working. I'm going to
Yeah.
attach the
Yeah.
grant here. This is timed on time, and they accepted it, and we actually got the grant. So
Yeah.
keep a copy of your paperwork.
Yeah.
Come into G2 or some other organization or go to the library, make a copy. It is worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can definitely relate. We've multiple times we've been in the final hour, right? Getting grants in. It is, I really empathize the panic, all that work of a grant, right? And you're trying to get it in and to feel like it doesn't submit. I really relate to you on the frustration, but yeah, the copy thing is such a big deal. I mean, not only for us, but with landlords and really any of the organizations, right? Is because it's so important. And it's so with smartphones today, right? It's really easy. There's, Google Drive, it's free, and there's a direct to scan function. You don't have to take pictures. Like you can actually have professional scanned documents right on your smartphone, right? It's just taking pic and it just scans right in. And then you have a copy of it. Email, like you said, is fantastic. And you're right. Sometimes we make mistakes. And my big motto is we fail forward. And if we've made a mistake, absolutely, like let us know. We will try to correct it. And you have that power, like you said, if you've emailed or scanned, to be like, hey, I scanned this on this date, right? And then, dropped it off, So I think that's really helpful for helping us and advocating for yourself, but also with landlords. And this is especially true if you feel like your landlord is not treating you fairly or is not following the law, because if you're at the point where legal is getting in or we're advocating to get legal services in, it's all hearsay, right? Unless you have emails, unless you have leases, like, if you have long-term stay agreements. So all this stuff is really crucial to have, right? As far as, making sure that your landlord is treating you fairly. Now, again, the vast majority of landlords are fantastic. And we've had a really lot of good partnerships, but there is some, that we've had some issues with, and I know tenants have some issues with, and that can really be helpful if you have your documentation in a row. And it also, like it or not, right, there is the bias of if you have your documents, right, it's going to make you look more professional, and that's not always, the best thing, but that is, it's always a helpful tip, just working with anyone. If you got all your ducks in a row, say, hey, this is what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, did you have anything else to say about vacating clients?
Nope. No. So
okay.
The next one, subleases and friends and family?
Yes, this one is a big one because I was surprised at some of the news that came out on this. So
yeah. Please ask some questions here to help elaborate points, because this is one that we've probably had the most issues with, and in one that is really complex. And I really want folks to know we understand how complex it is for low-income folks just trying to survive, right? We get it, but there is also, we are trying to balance, right, of the grant guidelines and the rules of the program, and it is hard. So I think one thing that we've seen is that we're paying someone as the landlord, and they don't have permission to be the landlord, essentially. And ERAP, that was the program last year that we referred to, and that program was really quick, right? In the matter, since the fall, 3 or 4 months, there's like $3 million that we got out. And again, a lot of credit to all our KEPA outreach organizations. We worked really, really quickly. But part of the ways that that program allowed for flexibility was with people that were staying in friends and family, non-traditional lease agreements. And that's still okay. We can help people in that situation if they have permission to sublease. And I think
that's a big problem, Matt. That's a huge one. So, I remember telling folks, I mean, far and wide, it's like, look, in this, it's cultural, but it's also, a necessity for a lot of folks, right? That it's like, look, kid needs to move back in the house. My brother, my sister needs to move back out of the house. They just got out of jail or prison or whatever the situation is. Or they're on hard times. They lost their job. Whatever the situation is, right? It's tough. There's a separation or a divorce, and the mom moves back in with her kid to her parents' home, right? But there's no permission from the landlord for them to be there. But you're not going to allow your kinfolk and your family to go and stay on the street. And so that's the scenario. And so under that old program, that was acceptable. But what I'm hearing you say now is that's only acceptable if the landlord knows about it and approves it. True story?
Yeah, that's really kind of what was going on. And even back then, we weren't really checking, but it really, really wasn't allowable even back then. We were just moving so quick, right? And I think that's where some of the miscommunication was on us, is we could have communicated clear up front what the expectations were. Because we understand, people are moving back in. It's a really tough time. People are doing all types of stuff to survive. But we understand. But as part of our obligation to landlords, right, is that we do have to, especially if federal and state money is going on behalf of a person, we have to make sure that they're not violating their lease, right? That's what's going to get us in trouble, and ultimately the client as well. And so I know it's so hard because a lot of people are doing that temporarily, or they might be doing, they might have welcome people in their home and under the table, maybe charging them rent. we know all that stuff is happening, and that's so they're not homeless, and we're glad they're not homeless, right? I'm really glad that they've have a friend and family support network. But the tricky thing is when you actually try to get, public assistance for that, right? That's where we're running into some problems. So
what we're jump in there, Matt, really quick, because that's not a KCR thing, right? That's a federal government thing. And this is why it's important, one, that you are active in politics, that you know who's running, what their platform is, and if your voices and your concerns aren't heard, then your needs aren't going to be met, right? So if you've been watching the news and you know what's been going on, billions of dollars have been set aside for this situation, but yet billions of dollars are still being held up because of the way that the laws have been written on how to get the money into the hands of those that really need it, right? And that is a big situation. And so when you think of this, you think of our ecosystem, our economy from a macro scale, right? You already had homelessness. You already had housing insecurity. You already had non-livable wage jobs. You already had housing prices that are out of control. We could just talk about Kitsap County, let alone nationwide, right? We're not even the worst place, right?
Yeah.
But you already have all these factors. Now you land a pandemic on top of it with opening and closing and all these different things that are happening. And what you're having is people are being crushed even faster, right? And now we're able to start to see it now. It's not just California. It's not just Seattle when you get off the ferry and you're downtown and you see the tent cities underneath, the freeway passes, right? You're seeing it more and more. Wonder why, if you look at the old Kmart, that used to be the old Lowe's and some other things that are now, a storage, right? There's storage everywhere. Why? Because these people have to downsize from their homes and put their belongings in storage. And now they've got to survive on a smaller house, on less. And then the folks that were in that position, they have to, go to less, right? And you have folks that are moving in with each other. Then, you see folks starting to hang out and living in their cars. And then folks are, in emergency shelters. And then lastly on the street. So, we've been watching this for those of us in the work for decades, right? And it's just kind of been this slow burn, but now it's accelerated and the pandemic has just made it even worse. So, it's frustrating because our politicians, it doesn't matter if it's DC, right? Doesn't matter if it's state, they hear about it, they know about it, but no one really seems to have the solution on how to tackle this housing crisis that we've been in. And there's so many factors, right? There's healthcare, there's education, there's housing prices. It's all of the above, right? It's careers, it's a livable wage. It's all of these things all at the same time. And now we're being hit with this, and they can release all the money. And that's where you come up with scenarios where it's like, well, you can throw as much money as you want to this problem as you want, and you're not going to solve it. And that's what we have now. So I just wanted to jump in there and just say that, because I think sometimes the people that are here trying to help, right? This is the organization. This is how it is. You're going to take the slings and arrows. And it's like, I actually don't make the rules. I'm actually trying to find out ways that I can color all the way to the edge of that line without going outside. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you saying that, Marwan. And I mean, well, one, you're right. I mean, that was a really good overview of the challenge that our clients are in right now, right? That a lot of folks are in. And there's so many overwhelming problems, and you're absolutely right. Our attitude, we're gonna follow the grant rules, but we're gonna go right on the edge of the inside, if you will, right? Like we're gonna try to get as many people in the box as we can, to help. And you're right. Most of the rules come from start with the federal, then Commerce. Although I know Commerce tried to streamline them as much as they can to give the most flexibility. So there is folks that try, but at the end of the day, right, we're all accountable to someone, and we, ultimately are accountable to the state or to the county first, right? Then the Commerce, and then the Department of Treasury. And so, yeah, there is some constraints that we have, and our basis, and I know it's frustrating, and I don't blame people that get frustrated for us, right? Because we're the face. But I do appreciate, and that you speaking is that we're actually trying to qualify them. We're trying to help, right? Our mission is always to help as many people, get rent assistance as possible and qualify them for the program. And this is just one of those areas, right, that we really can't, get around is the sublease area. And this also has implications for people that are on Section 8 or subsidized housing, right? Is that and there's a few issues regarding, the Section 8 and subsidized housing, but folks that are, that are on Section 8, you don't want to sublease, right? Because you could be putting your Section 8 voucher in jeopardy, right? Almost all the HAP contracts that I've seen don't allow subleasing. So essentially, and that's like, you don't want to put, because the Section 8 is such a valuable resource, right? And it's so limited. If you have it, you definitely don't want to, and we don't want to put that in jeopardy. And the thing is, we can help Section 8 folks we just have to pay it to the landlord, right? We can't have you subleasing, one, because it's a potential violation of your lease with the landlord. More importantly, it's a violation of your HAP contract, your Section 8. But three, we still want to help you. We'll just qualify you as a whole household, pay the portion that you're behind that Bremerton Housing Authority is not paying, and then we can help you get caught back up. And so that's really what we're trying to do now, and why we're parcel searching all places that aren't, professional property management, so that we can make sure, okay, who are we paying, right? Is this person, are they the landlord? And if they're not the landlord or the owner, then we just start asking questions, right? Of like, and the reason we're asking questions is so to avoid paying the wrong person, right? And to make sure, and then our next question is, okay, if you're not the landlord, okay, you're subleasing here, do you have permission to sublease? And then if they say, well, no, then we say, well, what if we qualified you as a whole household and just paid the landlord, right? So people, again, we're not trying to be like, oh, you messed up, you're out, right? Denied. We don't have a deny sticker that we're putting on applications, right? Like, we're trying to say, okay, this is how we can help you, right? This is what, this is the situation, because you don't have a sublease here. Let's catch that ahead of time. So we're trying to be a little more proactive now, so we don't run into problems in the future. And then people don't have to worry about, did they get an overpayment or something that they shouldn't have.
So let me ask you, let's say I was on Section 8 and I had a family member or a friend that fell in hard times, and I moved them in. And I don't know how the program works. So I come to you and I say, hey, I heard that I might be able to get some money this way. And you're like, well, no, your landlord needs to, be approving of this or whatnot. And it's like, whoa. If my landlord knows that I've let my baby sister live here, I'm going to get evicted too, or this is going to, get me in trouble. I mean, what's going to happen at that point? Like, because that can cause people not to want to come and seek help because so
and the last thing we want to do is, we don't want to put anyone's voucher in jeopardy, right? Because that's long-term stability. So that's a really good question. So I think the first part is, letting us know, and the navigator that they're working with, hey, this is the situation, right? This is what's going on. What can I qualify for, right? And then the navigator most likely at that point is going to say, okay, well, you're in a Section 8, so we know that you can't sublease. Let's qualify you all as one household, right? And then we can work to try to pay the entire household for the part that they're missing on their Section 8. That's typically how we've handled it. Now,
I'm hearing whole household. I guess I'm latching onto the buzzword. So then what you're just saying is you just process the paperwork as the tenant and landlord, and that's it.
Yeah, correct. And thank you for that clarification. So essentially, they might apply, and you're right, they'll say, hey, I'm renting to my friend, right? They might come in and apply that way. We would recommend, right? We would say, hey, just so you know, and here's your HAP contract, right? Like, you shouldn't do that. So we can't help you with that, but we could help you if you're applying directly with your landlord, right? Because you're on the lease, you have the HAP. Here's how we can help you specifically, and we might advise you that, hey, I would be very careful with this, because you're putting your voucher in jeopardy, and then let the client, right, make the decision that they need to make, but then letting them know how we can help them.
Right. And then it's like, no, they're actually just staying here for a week or two, and
exactly.
The next place. So all right, let's get it done. All right.
Exactly.
Because that's important, right? When we don't have information, or we try to figure out the program for ourselves, or we figure the program out based on how someone else experienced the program, no two scenarios are the same. It's like
Yep.
snowflakes. Let me tell you, right?
Yep.
One little instance or situation changes it totally. And so your friend or someone you heard, oh, well, they did this, that, and this is how that program works. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's how it worked for them. It may not work for
Yeah.
you that
Yeah.
way. So it's
Yeah.
really important to know that. And,
Yeah.
as much as you want to, you're not going to be able to put that square peg in a round hole all
Yeah.
the time. So just be cognizant of that. I see a lot of people fall into that trap of, well, it happened this way and it happened that way. And again, it could be an oversight. So I don't
Mhm.
want to say when I speak, you haven't been on my podcast when I talk about this, but my assumption is if you're listening to me, that you're going to be intellectually honest, right? You're not going to be intellectually dishonest. When I'm making comments, I don't mean all, right? I can never say all of anything, right? There's
Mhm.
always going to be scenarios and situations where that doesn't count. But if you want to pick apart my argument or my statement because I said, well, it's this way, understanding that I don't mean it that way, but that's your way to try to dig, then you're being intellectually dishonest. And it's very hard to have a conversation that way. So just want to be very clear about that. We're not going to get anywhere if we don't do that. And if we're looking at gotcha, that doesn't work. So
Yeah.
people in this space, we're all intellectually honest here. And if someone says something that's wrong, you can ask for clarification, because attacking isn't going to, fix the situation, right? Maybe they said it wrong. Maybe you heard it wrong. Or maybe they meant it that way and that's what it was, right? Oh, I was right. You did say it that way. All right. Well, now I know, you know what I'm saying? But again, grace, understanding, communication. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I love it. Absolutely. And what you said too about everyone's situation is different. I really appreciate that because everyone's situation is different. It's true, right? Because you have some people that might have a landlord that's willing to write a letter saying that they can sublease, right? Or they have it in a lease. Some people don't. Some people need to ask for permission, right? Some people are on Section 8. Some people aren't. So we see a lot of these different scenarios, and then. And I agree with you. If people are trying to qualify based on a friend, that's just not a very good metric because their living situation might be different, right? Or, we did miss some stuff. Maybe we processed them incorrectly, right? Maybe that's not the way it was supposed to go, and we make mistakes too. If they come to light, we always try to address them. We always try to work together to solve it. But there are mistakes that we all make. So I think that's a really, really good point, and to try to help people let's talk about your situation, right? And so that we can help you, because the worst case scenario is that, right, if people are in a situation where we paid them in error, right, then we were typically working to try to get that money back, right? Typically from the landlord, but it's not a fun situation. So we really try to avoid that at all possible. Those are not fun days for sure for anybody. It's a lose-lose situation all the way around.
Yeah, that's a true story. So that kind of makes me think of a couple scenarios and questions, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you happen to fall into a repayment status, how does that work? I mean, like what is the consequence on me as the resident and as the landlord, right? Well, because I actually don't know the answer to that question, so I'm just kind of thinking about like, well, what if I did go into that situation? Like, how would that impact?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's in that case, it's going to come down to the ledger, and this is where it's extremely important for tenants to understand what they're paying, how much they owe, and tenants can always go to their landlord and ask for a ledger. Right? Landlords, are required to keep the books. Right? The tenants should be able to go and say, "Hey, how much do I owe? What's going on?" Especially if you enter into a repayment plan. And I would definitely, before you sign off on a repayment plan, really make sure you understand what they're asking, because repayment plans are supposed to be reasonable. Now, a lot of people can argue over what's reasonable, but what I would argue, if the tenant can't pay it, then it's not reasonable, right? If your rent is $1,000 a month and the landlord is going to say, "Well, I want the $1,800 right on top of that," that doesn't seem very reasonable to me. That's part of some of the new tenant protections that are in place. So thank you for bringing up the repayment plans. I definitely understand what it is, how much you're specifically asked to repay, and is that something you can actually afford? Because if you can't, then I wouldn't sign that agreement, and I would try to call the eviction defense hotline or clear or get in touch with Kitsap Legal Services, because they might be able to help you negotiate a better repayment plan. Because this is something that, it's a contract that you're entering into. Now, if you're in a repayment plan and your name comes up on the wait list, or you get referred through Gather Together, Grow Together, and we're looking at your application, so it's a little tricky. So the first is, if you're your normal rent's $1,000 and you're paying $200 extra a month, we would look back, because that $200 is not now your new rent. That's just repaying what you don't owe. So we wouldn't pay $1,200 a month. We would go back to see actually what you owe, get you all caught up, and then pay 2 months of future rent, as long as it was under 12 months. So to answer your questions, we wouldn't pay the $1,200. We would go back and see, okay, where's the last time that you weren't able to pay, right? And then, because typically landlords apply, when you make partial payments, they apply it to the back balance. So that's how we look at ledgers. We say, all right, at what point, right, when they applied, no matter when you kind of made payments, right, where are you behind? And then we go from there. And then that's the point at which we would get you all caught up. So from the landlord's perspective, when we're paying and you're in a repayment situation, we would just get you caught back up and then do the 2 months forward, as long as that didn't exceed 12 months. So it would look a little weird, because it actually would look, it would look like a lump sum from the landlord, and then you would, and this is we would work with you. We wouldn't expect you all, that's why we have navigators working with you. You wouldn't put your new repayment amount in there. You would put your normal rent, because we're not looking at it from the repayment perspective. We're looking at it, get you caught up perspective, and then 2 months forward. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does. Thank you for that. Because like I said, there's a lot of different scenarios, and my office staff is the one that does the day-to-day with executing and helping to make all this go. So the nuance of it, I don't have a very depth, understanding about it. So it's helpful for me too,
Absolutely. And Marwan, those are such good questions. These are great.
So why don't we move on to letters of attestation and pledge? There's a big difference here, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So letters of attestation just means you get that when you apply for assistance, whether if you are working with a KEPA outreach organization and they submit your application, or you're coming down, submitting online, or to Kitsap Community Resources, you get a letter of attestation. And what this is something you can take to your landlord. We can send it to them electronically too, so that they get it. But it's a letter that you can tell your landlord, I've applied. And this is important, especially right now. The bridge is coming up, ends in a few weeks. But right now, if you're waiting for rent assistance, that should block the landlord from moving forward with eviction. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so don't quote me on legal advice, but my understanding is it, at least while during the bridge, and potentially even after, depending on if you're doing a repayment plan or not, it gets really complicated. So if you have specific legal questions about your case, definitely call an actual legal resource like CLEAR, the Eviction Defense Hotline, or Kitsap Legal Services to get some potential help. But that's where the letter of attestation comes in, because it's like, hey, I'm waiting for rent assistance, right? Either a navigator's working on it, or they're on the wait list right now, which is about 4 weeks for general clients. And then when we'll get to that, so that's what the letter of attestation for. It's like, hey, you're waiting, you're here, you're in line, but because of the volume, we're not to you yet. The letter of pledge is when all the documents have come in and you've been either pulled from the wait list, or a KEPA outreach organization has submitted your application, and navigators looked at it. We've gotten our income, right? Unemployment, whatever it is. And hey, you're ready to go. That's when we send it up to our fiscal team. I've signed off on it. And then I or Jessica, we signed the letter of pledge. And that means you are going to get, or the landlord is going to get that money on behalf of you. So the letter of pledge, because it still takes a few weeks for our fiscal team, right, to process, and then the mail. So as soon as we make the letter of pledge, we still are letting landlords know it's probably going to be a month until they get that check. just because the process, but it's at least another like kind of step so that the communication with the tenant and with the landlord saying, hey, here you go, you're going to get this money. And so, you can kind of know where you're at in the process.
So, okay, so that's good to know. So if I was going to kind of just walk through the steps, right?
Yeah.
I need some help. I walk into G2 and I'm like, hey, I heard about rental assistance. Can you help me? And we say, sure, we're going to fill out this paperwork and we're going to send it to KCR.
Yep.
You guys get it. And then I get a letter of attestation that says, hey, we got your paperwork.
Yep.
You're in line. You're in the queue. You're in the back of the line, right? You're at the grocery store. You got your buggy. Or you got your hand cart, and you're waiting to get your food. You haven't paid for it. You can still walk out without getting food, but you're in line.
That's right.
Now, once you get to the checker,
you
check everything through, and it's like, okay, your groceries came up to $108.
Yep.
Now you get your pledge letter, right?
Yep.
And now it's like, okay, yeah, you're gonna go ahead and get that $108 for your groceries paid, and you're good to go. From that point, it might take about a month for the landlord to receive that $108.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So that sounds pretty good.
I love that analogy. Yeah. So exactly. So the letter of attestation is that you're in line, right? And it's basically the checker saying, I'm holding your spot in line, right? Here you go. Holding your spot in line. And then the letter of pledge is the receipt after you've got all your groceries, you've checked out, right? You got them in the cart, and then here's the receipt. Absolutely. Yep. That's a great analogy.
And then your landlord's not going to get that confirmation, that money for about a month. And give or take, right? It's not going to be exactly 30 days. It could be a little bit before. It could be a little bit after.
Yep.
But that's the big thing. Once you get that pledge, you can relax. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But that letter of attestation does say, hey, we got your paperwork and you're in the queue. We will be processing it. We just need some time. And it sounds like that could take a few weeks also, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's we're prioritizing the KEPA outreach organization. So those will always move faster than our general folks, right? Because they're on the wait list. So depending on which pathway you come through. But typically it's still going to take, from by the time if your name comes up on the wait list or a KEPA outreach organization drops it off, we're roughly 2 weeks if everything goes smoothly. Now, if we need some documentation and we can't get the documentation, that's going to drag it on. Right. And so now we might, 4 weeks, hopefully not. But if we can get that documentation quick. And then the folks that are on the wait list are general,
right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of back and forth. Hey, you need this paperwork. You got to go and find the information or get someone else to sign off on it. Right.
Yep.
Then you got to get it back. They've got to look at it again.
Yep.
So there is a huge delay that's in there. And I know that causes a lot of stress and strife. Is there a way for folks to kind of check and see where they're at in the process? Like they got their letter of attestation, but they don't have their pledge yet. Is there a way for them to check where they're at in that process?
Yeah. So, and hopefully if they're at that phase, they're already working with a navigator, right? So at that point, we want a lot of the problems that we're having people getting delayed is we're trying to call folks and say, hey, we need this, or, can we help you? The navigators, a lot of times we'll talk with landlords on their behalf. We'll talk with Puget Sound Energy. Anyone that we can talk to, we will try to talk to on their behalf. Again, we're trying to qualify people and get money. We're trying to get people paid, right? Not the other way around. There's some places like Social Security office that they won't talk to us, right? So that the client, might need to go in there. But that's the delay a lot of times is clients, not calling us back. And we get it. People are busy. I understand. But I hope everyone understand, your landlords are already frustrated if you're behind on rent, right? So it's not something you want to drag your feet on too much, if you can avoid it. We get stuff happens, people, crisis, family. But I would definitely, if you can, be calling us. And so, our navigators love when people are calling all the time and saying, hey, where am I at? Because that means that they're engaged, right? They're advocating for themselves. And then our navigators will let them know, hey, we need this, or I'm waiting for your landlord on this. So when it's at that phase, calling your navigator, that's the best way to get updates because they're the one working. Now, if you're, go ahead, Marwan.
Oh, so I was going to say, is it preferred a phone call? Can an email work also?
Both are
Both?
great.
And
Both.
so once that letter of attestation comes in, you're assigned a navigator, and so you know who that is to call and contact. You're not calling a general number, you're calling that person.
Depends on the pathway, right? So remember, there's two pathways. So there's the KEPA outreach partner pathway, right? And that's all people that you refer, and those people don't go on the wait list. We prioritize them right away, right? Because that's
Right.
because that's how we're prioritizing our racial equity goals, right? Because you are working with folks historically underserved, right? People that don't have the resources, right? Have experienced racial disparities. So we are trying to prioritize, right, you all in order to reach our racial equity goals.
So for people who are asking, why would we come to the buy-in for versus going straight to KCR? Priority, it's like first class. I'm just saying.
That's right.
Go ahead.
There
I'm
you
sorry.
go. There you go. So that's how we're doing it. But then everyone that's coming just right to KCR, right? They get on the wait list. So those folks won't get a navigator until their name is pulled from the wait list. And so those folks, they can just call either of our front desk folks, 360-473-2035. That's Housing Solution Center. That's where they drop applications off. And they can always let them know where they are in the wait list, right? We'll let them know their number, roughly what number we're at right now. And so they'll we can try to, let them know, hey, probably, again, we're always estimating time. So I know some folks, where we don't always estimate, right? We say, it's probably about a week, might be a little over. Usually we're not that far off, but we're within a week, but it might be a little over. But so that's what we'll let you know kind of roughly when to expect a call. Now, your
Give
folks,
me that number again, really quick.
360-473-2035.
2035. All right.
Yep.
That is on the screen for everyone. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's the general housing solution number. So if you don't know where to go, it's always a good place to start is Housing Solution Center. Yeah. And so those are for general folks that aren't coming through an outreach agency. They get on the wait list about 4 weeks. Then a navigator they'll pull the name from the wait list when they come up. Then a navigator reach out to them. Now you all, the KEPA outreach organization. So Marwan, you can give folks and let them know, hey, I'm submitting your application, right? And I believe your navigator is Cody. You're always going to be working with Cody. So you can, Cody will reach out to them. You can also let them know to reach out to Cody. That's perfectly fine. We're okay with that.
Perfect. And again, as I was saying before, if you do it by email, right, and you get a response, then you've got that receipt, you've got that record, right? Because we are busy. There's a lot of anxiety. If you need rental assistance, if you need utility assistance, which this can also help with, right? And we'll talk about that before we end the conversation, because it's not just rental assistance.
Yep.
But if you need these things, you're already in an anxious state, right? And so you may have called 2 days ago, but that may have seemed like 2 months ago. But if you're sending an email, then that kind of just helps to give you a record. Okay, I checked in 2 days. It wasn't a week. All right, I'll give it another day or two, and I'll go ahead and send another email. When you've gotten a response, you know what they've told you. No, we haven't gotten to you yet. You're still on the wait list. No, you do have your letter of attestation, and now you're kind of in that, you're in the line waiting to buy your groceries, right? And then once you get to that pledge, then you know that you've got that pledge. You've got the money. Your landlord should know that the money is there. And again, if you have an email and you have a relationship with the landlord, if you don't, I encourage you to do so. Whether it's property management or a landlord, know who they are. You're living in their space, right? So you have a symbiotic relationship. And so the better that relationship, the more understanding and the more grace, hopefully, that entity, if it's an entity or a person, may extend to you, right? Because they can understand your mitigating circumstances. Hey, I take good care of your property. I've always paid on time. There's never been any issues. The police aren't coming to the house for all kinds of drama. So, hey, this one time I'm having some trouble here. Work with me, please. And typically we are willing to make concessions for people that we know that we have some kind of relationship with, that we know that care about us too, or care about our property, right? They've worked hard to amass, the properties that they have. And so you're in that that scenario, right? But it's incumbent upon you. So you're in their space. They may not reach out to you. You may not even, like, my landlord doesn't even live in the state, but I do have a relationship with him online and actually on text. So we can have conversations back and forth, and that's important, right? Um, he actually made a deal with me. I think it was like last Christmas? And again, everyone's going through it. And he was saying, hey, if you pay the rent early this month, he was going to give me some type of a deal, right? He was like, I'll give you $50 off your rent. And it's like, yeah, he got on hard times. Like, all right, well, if I pay you two, you give me 150, and he went for it. So, it's like, hey, I can work with you, but it's the holidays. I get it. He has kids, he has families, he has multiple properties. So I know he's trying to juggle things, and because that relationship was there, then we can do that, right? And we can negotiate on both sides. And negotiations is a whole nother thing. We'll have to get into that another time. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, keep going. Marwan, I could not agree with you more. That is such a good point. And we see that time and time again with folks, is that I think a lot of people, because of shame, and totally understandable, right? You're behind on rent, you feel that shame, and we get it. It's hard to be behind on rent, right? Feel like you can't look your landlord in the eye, but it's actually the exact opposite, right? It's that Brene Brown, right? The shame, vulnerability actually builds trust, right? Not the other way around. So when you actually are, hey, this is what's going on, if you communicate with your landlord, right, and let them know, I all the time we see landlords. And I'm amazed. Some landlords are really trying to work with their tenant, and typically it's because they have a relationship with them. So that is, for the most part, I know sometimes you got to put boundaries because not all landlords are like that, right? But for a lot of cases,
in your house on a Tuesday night,
yeah.
I mean,
there's sometimes, yep, you got to keep them at arms. That's, yeah, absolutely. But there are some landlords that really have made a lot of exception, are really working for their tenants, right, and are really working hard. And I think that's because of that relationship. And there's a lot of landlords that want to do the right thing too, right? They understand people are going through hard times, right? And I think you get there because of that relationship, communicating. The other piece I want to say to that is, especially from the legal standpoint, you really lose a lot of your rights if you just don't respond, right? So if you get a 14-day notice, or you're getting these notice of repayment plans, even if you're saying, no, I can't do this, that kind of keeps you floating in the process. Whereas if you don't respond, again, I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is that's kind of the fast track to keep the eviction process moving. But if you're responding to them, communicating, telling them the situation, telling them why you can't pay, that at least gives you a little more ground to stand on. And again, I would refer you to legal services if you're at that point. But I think it's very helpful to actually communicate with landlords, and that especially early when landlords are starting to get you notices. So Marwan, I could not agree with that point more. I think that's a wonderful information piece that I know I didn't have until really working in the industry, right? Of how important it was to communicate with your landlord.
Yeah, those are facts. If you don't mind, I'm gonna go down memory lane here for a second.
Yeah, go.
And this is recent memory lane, and this kind of goes to show, that the saying, a closed mouth doesn't get fed, right? And by talking about what your issues are and what your concerns are, you never know what might come of it, right? People don't know what your challenges are unless you express them. But we were having some challenges with getting a person placed in the women's shelter, and this was just last week. And so I called the particular women's shelter, and we were having a conversation, trying to deal with that issue on it. That's what it was. And through the conversation, they were saying, hey, look, we're short beds, and we don't have these mattresses, and normally what is it, the warehouse barn, oh, what is the name of that place, the mattress barn out there in Gorst, normally donates mattresses, right? And so I was like, oh, you guys need mattresses, huh? I was like, well, give me 24 hours, let me see what I can do. So got off the phone and made a phone call, and we went and we purchased 6 mattresses for the women's shelter, and then ended up delivering those the next day, right? And so that wasn't the purpose of the phone conversation, but because we were, having a conversation together and trying to find solutions and trying to advocate for other people, they expressed the need, not having any expectation that G2 could take care of that need, and we were able to call that need, which
Yeah.
actually opened up 2 beds immediately, and now they also happen to be pillow top mattresses. So, those 2 individuals definitely lucked out over there. But, it's scenarios like that. And so it can become a pride thing or an ego thing where it's like, look, I don't want people to know that I'm struggling. I don't want people to know that I'm hurting. And it's not that everyone needs to know your business, but you do need to share that information with some people. And that's why your circle of influence and your circle of trust is so important, because without that, nobody knows what your struggles are. They don't know what your issues are. They have no idea how to help you. And you can feel very lonely in a world of 8 billion people. Like, no one cares about me and my family. I could just die on the side of the road, and it wouldn't matter. And it's not true. There are a lot of us that care. But one, we can only do what we can do, but we can only do it if we know about it, right? So it's really important. So, please, talk to folks about what your issues are and what your challenges are, and make and cultivate those relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's wonderful, Marwan. Could not agree with that more. So shall we move on to income?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next piece is income, and this is I know a little bit of a tricky one, and maybe for context, I should there's 3 pillars of how to qualify for the program, right? So there's your income, there's the financial qualification or hardship, and then the third is the housing status or housing vulnerability. So people that qualify the program, you got to meet 3 of those metrics.
One is income.
Income.
2
is financial hardship.
Financial hardship. Okay, and the third
is housing vulnerability.
Thank you.
Yeah, and typically we need those documented. There's cases where we can self-certify, and I'll go through that in a second, just so we're all on the same page. But essentially, we need those. The first kind of standard responses, we need those documented. And I'll come to income last because I know that's the big piece. But the easiest one is kind of the financial. I shouldn't say easy, meaning financial hardship is really difficult. But as far as gathering documentation, what I mean by easy, because that can be an unemployment letter. If you got an unemployment letter at all during the COVID period, you can use that, and that can qualify you. You can also, if you've experienced financial hardship elsewise, medical bills, right, childcare, whatever it is, if you've experienced financial hardship, loss of money, increased costs, you can self-certify that. So if you have a specific reason, right, that you can self-certify if you don't have an unemployment. So that's the first pillar. Second is the housing status. The most straightforward, there's a few different ways, but the most straightforward one is you're behind on your rent or you're behind on your utilities. So all you would need there is a ledger. And we usually want to collect the ledger anyways to find out how much you owe. So that's a dual purpose to get the ledger, 1 for qualification, 2 for payment, or you're behind on your utility bill. So those ones, that's kind of the next one that we need. And then the last one is income. And so income is the kind of the final piece to qualify you. I should also mention the program also wants us to collect the leases. So that's kind of the other piece. It's not like a qualification piece, but they asked us to collect a lease. So I'll mention it there as kind of the fourth. But income is the next pillar of qualification. And the income, we need the last 60 days. It could be your unemployment if that's the only, it could be your Social Security. It could be pay stubs. Pay stubs are the trickiest. We know those are hard to hunt down, and you got to get them from your employer. If they don't give them from you, we get that there's there's some difficulty there. But we need the last 60 days. So right now we're in August, so we would need the pay stubs from June and July. Or if you got one in August, then that would shift it, through partial months. But essentially, the past 2 months of your pay stubs, and then you need to be under 50% area median income, and that is on the KEPA pre-application. It's on our website, so you can look at your household size and see how much money you make. Now, the tricky thing there is that it's annualized, meaning that's per year. So if you get paid every week, you would multiply that by 52. If you get paid every 2 weeks, you multiply that by 26. And if you get paid monthly, you multiply that by 12 to annualize. So that's how you can kind of quickly look at how much you make and compare it to the annual amount.
All right, that's awesome.
The next thing is the other way we can qualify, and maybe the easier way, is if you like have TurboTax or your 2020 tax returns, right? Your gross income on your 2020 tax returns, if that is under 50% AMI, you don't even need to worry about the last 60 days income. You can just give us your 2020 tax returns and that can qualify you.
Your which tax returns? 20 what?
2020, last year's.
2020? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if the new year comes, right, in 2022, then once tax season's done, then you can submit 2021 tax returns if you've done them.
And that's if you're 50% under AMI, right?
Yep.
And what is AMI?
Area median income. So it's a way there's a few different ways to do it, but it's a way to kind of say, all right, you are low income, right? And that term is, I know, debated, but essentially, right, it's how this rent assistance is for folks, right, that don't make a lot of money, as opposed to, folks that do make a substantial amount of money, right? That's the whole kind of piece there for area median income. And basically what they do is they look at all the incomes in the area and then find the middle of it, right? So that's how you can kind of, the median just means middle. So they find the middle of it, and then 50% is half that. So below 50% AMI is half the person in Kitsap County, right? That from all the people that make a lot of money to people that make zero money, the person in the middle, half that person's income, that's 50% area median income. A little more complicated than that, but that's the gist.
Yeah, that one's a hard one.
What's that?
That one can be kind of confusing.
It is. It's confusing. You don't need to worry about it other than just knowing that you're under it, right? I know that I'm a math guy, so I kind of like to understand some of this stuff, but it is a little confusing. Other programs use the federal poverty level, right? So 100% or 200% federal poverty level. It's not the same. It's a little different calculation method, but they're all ways to kind of say I'm under this amount, so I'm considered low income. When to self-certify. I know there's a lot of confusion on this. So people can self-certify in certain situations, and especially for accommodations. And so this is when you would not turn in your documentation. You would just tell us what your income is. We have a self-certification form that the navigator will use to help qualify you. And they'll use this form. But we can only self-certify in the following situations. So one, disabilities, right? If you have a disability, we can self-certify. 2, extenuating circumstances related to the pandemic. Maybe you're trying to get your pay stubs, but your employer no longer exists because they went out of business, right? Can't get in touch with them. Okay, understandable. 3, lack of technological access, right? If you don't have the internet in your home, don't have a computer, you don't have a way to kind of get your unemployment letter or print that off. 4 is when a household's income or portion of it is not verifiable due to the impact of COVID-19. 5, you get paid in cash. Or 6, the household has no income. So those are the ways that people can, if you meet that criteria or you're in that situation, then you can self-certify your income.
Matt, give me the third one again.
The third one is lack of technological access.
And the one before that, what was the second one?
Extenuating circumstances related to the pandemic.
And what was the fifth one?
When a household's income or portion of it is not verifiable due to the impact of COVID-19. Those are pretty similar.
Okay. And the one after that?
Then have been paid in cash. So if you're a worker that gets paid under the table, if your income has been received in cash.
So if you're under the table, and then the last one was?
The household has no income, so that you don't have any income as of the moment.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you're in that situation, you can talk with your navigator and let them know, and then they'll fill out the self-certification sheet. But the navigators are always going to try to get documentation first, because that's what our instructions from Commerce are, is you try to get documentation first. Then if you can't for these reasons, then we can go forward and help and just self-certify.
All right. So I'm trying to type all that up because that was a mouthful there. So I'm gonna get it up
That's
there.
that's a lot.
Let
Yep.
me let me make sure I got it. Self-certify if you have a documented disability,
Yep.
lack of technological access,
Yep.
house income not totally verifiable,
Yep.
extenuating circumstances, which I
Hmm.
spelled wrong, under the table payments, and no income.
You nailed it. Got him on
All
one.
right. All right. So you can self-certify under those guidelines.
Yep.
And that's where Matt was saying, contact that navigator. I just learned that I can put the comments on the screen. So it's like, oh, this is awesome.
I
Right.
love it.
And then you gave me a bunch of big words to spell, and I don't have my Microsoft Word spell check. So, it's like, you used to teach college courses? Really? Okay.
No, spelling's not related to intellect. It's a separate skill.
Yeah, but they hammer you on anything they can, right? Hey, Mr. Cameron, I saw you spell that word. I'm gonna fail you.
Oh man.
So that's pretty good. Do you have? I think we covered everything, right? The landlord agreement issues, vacating clients, subleasing, friends and family, letters of attestation, and the pledge, and the differences between the two. And we use the shopping cart or the shopping being in line at the checkout as
Yep.
our analogy there, and then income documentation and those 6 different ways to self-certify, and the other ways that you need to navigate it. Having that either that TurboTax and being under 50% AMI automatically qualifies you and all that good information.
That's it.
We know it's a fire hose of information. It's another
It's a lot.
reason, to work with Buy and Force because we have this information also, and it's to help the process, right? We're all trying to work together
Yep.
on creating solutions for folks and keep them housed, right?
Mhm.
This is to me, this is a scary time. I use the Game of Thrones analogy. Winter is coming, and here we are in August, and Kitsap County is facing the highest COVID numbers ever since the pandemic.
Yeah.
That's a scary thought when you really think about that.
Yeah.
And that's even with a lot of us being vaccinated. So for it to be in that situation and for us to be in 90-degree heat, we're outdoors, right? I mean, what they were saying before is, hey, if everyone's outdoors, COVID can't really spread because you're out in the
Mhm.
air. And we're all out in the air. Well, I guess some of us are trying to stay in because it's too hot. But this is happening in the summer. So what's going to
Mhm.
happen when it starts to shift to fall and it starts getting cold and it starts to
Mhm.
rain, right? Shelters are full.
Yeah.
There's not a, there's I would argue there is no such thing as affordable housing in Kitsap County, but there's
Yeah.
not a lot of affordable housing in Kitsap County. If we go on the government's definition of what affordable is, there's not a
Mhm.
lot of it that exists here.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so the best thing that you can do, hopefully, is to stay housed where you're at, unless there's some unhealthy reasons on why you need to get out of that space.
Mhm.
Because there's not a lot of places to go. And
Yeah.
more people are going to find that if your relationship was fractured with your landlord and they go through the eviction process once this bridge for the moratorium is over, right, then what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? And that impact of your rental history, that landlord, your credit, right? If you're behind on your payments, are you working right now? Do you have first, last, and deposit? Do you make 3 times the rent? A lot of people are gonna answer no to that, and we've got a carrier that's here, and those folks uh may be able to pay that, right? They are going to meet those requirements, so they're going to get their housing. You've got
Mhm.
Seattleites and folks from Tacoma that are looking for cheaper places to be, and it's cheaper
Mhm.
here than it is in Seattle. So you've got them
Mhm.
saying, hey, it's a 30-minute commute on a foot ferry. I don't have to spend an hour and a half going from South Seattle to North Seattle. Deal, right? I can just jump on this ferry and I can live over here, and it's half the price than it is everywhere else. Then we're in this unique place on this peninsula where we're getting squeezed by these unique factors that make it really hard for the people that actually live here. And so it is so critical, people, as we go into the fall and winter, please get ready. Get ready now. No one was ready for the pandemic when it hit. And I mean, that's worldwide. No one was ready, but we should have learned something. We've been dealing with this for more than a year now, and we know that winter's coming. So please get ready. It's never too late to try to repair a relationship, establish a relationship, and cultivate your network. It is important. It is very difficult. I don't know if you remember when you couldn't get toilet paper and there was so much uncertainty and there,
Mhm.
food was not on the shelves and things of that nature. If you have, underlying health conditions like I do, you have folks that you could depend on that may be able to go out and fight through that and get the resources that you need so that you don't go without, right? Are you trying to plan ahead? I know many of us, are robbing Peter to pay Paul, and we're living, it's not even check to check, right? We can't fill the gaps in.
Mhm.
What and we've got to look at today. We can't really think about tomorrow. And I get that. We've got to live in the moment, but we do also need to raise our gaze a little bit and say, hey, this is what's on the horizon. I've got to be cognizant that those things are out there while I try to deal with the emergencies of the day. So I implore you to do that. Reach out, talk to somebody, definitely talk to a mental health counselor, talk to someone that you trust, that you value their counsel and advice. And don't hold that in, right? We carry a lot of anxiety, we carry a lot of stress, and especially for a lot of men, right? We carry all this stoicness and this strength on our shoulders, and we're not supposed to show our vulnerability, we're not supposed to show our weakness, and it chips away at us, right? And that can manifest in lashing out. It definitely manifests in heart attacks and strokes and shorter lifespans. So you've got to get that off of you in positive ways and have conversations. There's a bunch of us men that are going through it, and we sit and we have conversations, and it feels good, right, to have that conversation with someone that can identify with what you have going on. Not that they can solve it, but they can identify with it. I can see what you're saying. I feel what you're saying, and I'm there for you. If you just want to have a conversation and talk, or if you want to talk about solution oriented, right? And with my story about the women's shelter, right? Having those conversations. Oh yeah, you know what? Maybe you ought to consider that. Oh, I didn't even know about that. Man, good looking. So that's how those things can work. So please do that. You want to weigh in on that, Matt?
Yeah, yeah, I think a few things. Yeah, no, one, I think you're absolutely right. The really originally when a lot of these programs were conceived, it was because the spread of COVID, right? And you didn't want a lot of people being evicted at the same time. So, because that would put a lot of pressure on the shelter system. And then you would have a lot of people in congregate living situations, places that are, COVID could spread really rapidly. And it's something us in the business have known that housing leads to better healthcare options, right? And I feel like this is the first time that these programs were put in place, right, in order to help with public health, and that's still an issue. I appreciate you bringing up the Delta and the spread in our numbers right now, and so yeah, we don't want people to end up in shelter right now, and so I think trying to get assistance if you haven't, working with buy-in fours, all of that is helpful, and I know for some folks it's not enough, and people need more assistance, and we're trying to get through everyone once so we can help people again. But you also put up some people are getting displaced anyways. And that's probably the last thing I wanted to clarify, because there's some confusion regarding that of when can we help people move into a new place with this program? Well, the first is you have to be in a place, right? So if you're homeless right now, we cannot, or if you're experiencing homelessness, we can't use this program to move you into a new place. We have other programs, so still come to Housing Solutions Center if you're experiencing homelessness, because we have other programs, but this program specifically cannot help. When it can help is if you're in a place and being displaced because of COVID. So if your landlord is selling, the most common one right now that we've gotten, if your landlord is selling because the landlord is having financial trouble because of COVID, right? If you can document that you're being displaced because of the pandemic, then we can help you with move-in costs to get into a new place. And so that, again, all trying to avoid, right, people entering homelessness. And so if your other option, you've been talking with the landlord, they're selling, there's no way, right, they've got to do what's best for them. with this program, we can potentially move you into a new place. But we have to have that. And we can't self-declare that. We have to get documentation that the reason you're displaced is because of COVID. Another one might be you're in a shared living situation that is maybe not not under the landlord tenant law, and you're being asked to leave because, right, you either got COVID or someone else got COVID, right? That'd be another situation. And like Marwan, you said earlier, there's a lot of different combinations, but those are just two examples to help people get some concrete understanding. But if you can link why you're being displaced and document it, that's when we can help you get into a new place.
And is it true that whatever your situation is with your housing, when you come into housing solution centers and you fill out the application, it's kind of a one shoe fits all sizes, right? They're going to check on whether or not you're in a space and you need assistance, or you're actually homeless and you need housing, right?
Yep.
So all of that will be determined at that point in time. And if your situation changes,
Yep.
you're working with them, and so they should be able to, quickly shift your scenario as you shift and say, okay, you no longer have housing, now you're homeless, and now this is your scenario, or
Yep.
or vice versa.
Yeah.
So yeah, that really is important. Continue to check in, continue to advocate. That's a big deal. Let other people know. I think a lot of times, and I'll speak kind of from my personal experience here as an organization. We've been around for 3.5 years now, and hopefully we'll be around, for another 3 years, for sure. And hey, a lot of companies shut down last year during COVID,
Mm-hmm.
so we are definitely blessed to still be here when so many organizations went under, especially nonprofits, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, how you gonna stay open?
Yeah.
Um, but as folks would come into us, we would say, okay, we know where the resources are. This is where the resource is. Go on over here and check out the resource. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes those folks will come back and check in with you and say, hey, okay, I got this. This worked out, or this didn't work
Mm-hmm.
out. And sometimes they don't, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so we're more, I would say we're doing more case management now than we have ever done before. And
Mm-hmm.
part of our experience is just that, right? We say, hey, the resource is over there, so go over there, right? And so now the person goes over to the resource, whatever it is. And I'm not talking about KCR right now. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
wherever it is. And they go alone,
Yeah.
right? They don't know exactly what the process is. They know in general what kind of help they should get, but what's the process? What's the procedures? What's the policy? What do I do now? How does it work? If I have questions and I don't have access to them yet, can I come back and talk to you about it? Can I share my anxiety? That's important too. So if you are not connected with the Buy in For or any other organization, get connected with someone, because they can also be that advocate for you. They also can hear
Yeah.
things in a non-emotional state, right? So here you are, you're stressed out, you're anxious, you need this resource, you need this help right now, and you need an emergency. People are telling you all this foreign calculus that you've never heard before in regards to how this program works, 50% AMI and attestation and this and that. It's like, what is all this stuff? So if you have someone that can say, okay, no, don't worry about that, that's what this means. Okay, nope, don't worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
What we're gonna do, we're gonna call them, we'll email them, we'll ask them together. So I'm in the know, you're in the know, and you don't feel like you're taking this journey by yourself. That can be very powerful, and that can remove a lot of the isolation that a lot of people feel as they're trying to navigate these resources. It's hard enough for agencies to execute policies that oftentimes they didn't create. They're being handed down from the federal government or from the state, and they're trying to read through hundreds or thousands of pages of this is how you do this, and it's a Boolean statement, right? And they're trying to provide the services, and then you're trying to receive the services, and you're just missing, right?
Yeah.
And again, there's a mess that's in there too. We could talk about that, but there's a space to talk about that, and this isn't it.
Yeah.
But we're talking about people working and giving their actual best effort, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the bridge just not connecting for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so having someone that's there with you that can
Yeah.
kind of see things that you can't see over your shoulder can be very empowering, and it can remove and decrease a lot of your stress and anxiety, right? And just kind of be that, that support and that cheerleader. Good job. All right, you made it through this next step. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
You got your letter of attestation. You're in the
Yeah.
line. In a couple weeks, hopefully, you're going to go ahead and get that pledge. All right, now you
Mhm.
got that pledge. Don't stress. They're going to get the money. It's just going to take about a month, right? It's
Yeah.
all good. What else can we work on now? We
Yeah.
got that secured. What's next, right? So, please do that. I encourage you to do that.
Yeah, and I love that model you described, and I think it is. I mean, that is the extreme benefit of working with you all. Kayak, Gather Together, Grow Together, Hope 360, Surviving Change, Mount Zion, and Foundation for Homeless Poverty Management. All of the KEPA outreach organizations, because you're right. There's we have navigators right now that are working with clients and processing, but they're not doing, true traditional case management. We have case managers for our homeless services programs, right? But that's not, the vast majority of people right now. KEPA is the vast majority. So when you all are able to, kind of jump in and do some of that case management and help walk people through the process, that is incredibly valuable. And I think that partnership, and that's the way we want to work, even if it's not for a KEPA, even if it's for a homeless service, because sometimes we have our front desk, they're trying to get through, hundreds of phone calls now a day, right? And people walking in. And so you're right. Maybe I know it's difficult to tell your story in 5 minutes, and that's what our front desk do, because they're trying to slot people in the right spot. So Marwan, you're exactly right. If we miss something, that is the benefit of having an advocate, is you can help if we've missed something, but like, hey, this person, they should have got slotted for a navigator interview to try to see what homeless service is, and they didn't. What's happening? And then we can try to correct and try to get them into the right spot. So I think there's a lot of areas, and I think we're seeing that with a lot of the positive results we've gotten so far. But I think there's even a lot more areas for that synergy of having you all advocate for clients and helping us when we miss stuff, and then you all helping your clients understand the process, right? It's a nice feedback loop, right? Like, we're understanding areas that we're missing the mark. I think you're helping clients, right? And then we're, improving the services, that we do, and helping get clients in the right spot, and you're doing more. You're getting mattresses for shelters. I love it. It's awesome. Yeah.
And what I'll say too is, on the screen right now, it talks about volunteer and paid positions. You don't have to have a college degree. You don't have to have worked in a specific space for 5 to 10 years. Your experience, you yourself, are enough. Uh, G2 is made up by people that have gone through the system, that may still be using the system. And you are the SMEs, you are the subject matter experts. And your guidance on how to navigate, whatever it is, right? It may be navigating housing services, it may be navigating staying clean, right? Your sobriety, attending an AA or an NA class, someone that has had that experience and has their 6 months or a year or 2 year, 5 year, 10 years. um you aren't alone, and you are valuable, and we could definitely use you uh in a space. You have purpose, and you know come through, because there's so many different things that you can do. uh and I think people need to hear that more. They feel like, oh, it's an organization, or it's this. I don't really feel like I belong, or I don't have anything to offer. You absolutely do. When we pick someone up, uh, and take them on a ride, whether it's from Kitsap Mental Health or Salvation Army, the rescue mission, or to run an errand, or to go to a doctor's appointment, that ride is tremendously important to them at that time. Um, our delayed services, when we talk about healthcare, whether it's mental health or physical health, right? We delay it, especially men. We're not going to the doctor. Rub some dirt on it and keep it going. Not what we're supposed to do, right? Because if you go early, then they could be proactive and not reactive, right? And not wait until things are a lot worse, where that little cavity turns into a root canal.
Mm.
And so if you're taking advantage of mental health, or you're thinking about going to mental health, or you've even tried it in the past, you know how important it is to go on a regular basis. It's just like exercising and everything else, right? You have to go, and you have to establish that habit. But if you're missing every third appointment, or you're late, 10-15 minutes late, then you're robbing yourself. And so that's why transportation is so important. So as a driver, if you're driving, know that you are getting someone to their appointment that might not, maybe one, not go, or probably late, or two, maybe it takes them a really long time on the bus. We have clients that have specialists that are in Posbo. And it's like a 7-hour round trip bus ride to get out there, go through the appointment because you're waiting in the waiting room. It's your turn. You get in, you're done. You get back on the bus, and you come home. That's their whole day for them. And so that their time is the most valuable resource that we actually have. And so, having a driver's license, and you say, hey, I don't have all these experiences and all this education. Don't need it. Don't need it. The impact that you make in people's lives is just your presence and being there. It is tremendous. Matt, I do want to thank you for coming. I want to give you the final word, just final thoughts on anything. I know we went a little bit long, but I think it was perfect. My longest one has been almost 4 hours. So,
Ooh.
I can go.
I don't doubt that one bit. That's awesome, though. I mean, there's a lot of good information. There's a lot of information to share, and there's a lot of topics, so it's understandable. Well, first I'll say your transportation is. I mean, I think you saw a need in the community and have just filled that, because I cannot tell you. Almost all of our clients struggle with transportation, and our clients have used your services, and it's really been very, very helpful. So I think that's really wanted to commend all your work on transportation, because that is a huge issue. But no, I appreciate the opportunity, and I definitely appreciate all the work that Gather Together Grow Together is doing, and I hope to continue working. And I think I think we're doing this somewhat regularly now, so I'll see you again soon, and I just am filled with a lot of gratitude for that you guys want us on, and that you're willing to work with us, and that you're helping us work reach people that we wouldn't normally reach. And so very, very humbled by that, and because I think there's a lot of really good work that all the KEPA outreach organizations are doing. So thank you.
I'm gonna give you an applause. Definitely appreciate you coming on, for sure. I was smiling while you were talking because someone sent me a personal text. So, we can be very immature. And apparently, I said I could go for 4 hours, and they just went a whole nother way with that. So they didn't put that in the chat. So thank you for that. But of course, you still made me smile on camera. So now I'm looking like a crazy person while Matt's talking.
No, not at all.
That's what happens when you're live. I hope that you would be willing to come back and have a conversation again. One thing that I think might be helpful is I don't know a lot about the other side. You said, if you're homeless, then, or if you need rental assistance, this is what we're talking about today. But if you're homeless, it's a whole nother thing. I don't know if you have knowledge on that, or if there's someone that you know at KCR that would be willing to come on and kind of talk about what that process is about. But I think that would be really powerful and helpful for folks too.
Well, that's actually believe it or not, that's my primary job is as housing manager. I'm in charge of the homeless services side, and then Jessica, who's Housing Solution Center, we jointly manage the KEPA outreach team. So again, being short staffed, so that would be me to talk to.
All right. Well, then let me ask you now, would you be willing to come on maybe early next week and talk about that process and what that looks like?
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to come back.
All right. You can switch hats and put it on the one and say, hey, I'm Matt. Hi, I'm Mr. Garrett. All right, y'all. I am Marwan Cameron. That is Matt Garrett of KCR. We appreciate your time today. We hope that it was valuable. We hope that you've learned a lot. We hope that this empowers you to ask questions, to advocate for yourself or advocate for those that you love or care about. As you know, I don't do as many shows as I've done in the past because things have changed, right? The shows have gotten larger. We're having folks come on and do information. The studio has changed. So it's about quality and not quantity. And so that's really important. But we will be back again. And until next time, I am Marwan Cameron. This is the Conduit.